This is Call of Duty Black Ops 6. We're here on PlayStation 5. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. This is the latest entry in the obviously very long-running, specifically Black Ops franchise now, since there's 6 of them. So we're going to be diving in and talking about the different parts of the experience. First, the campaign, then the zombies, and then the multiplayer, ending with a little bit of a ending thoughts, little parts just to go over the entire package here on the PlayStation 5, alongside the technical details, which is expected when we're doing, this sort of video. Alright, so the campaign is quite a bit of a change up from previous entries, while still leaning heavily on what we had with Modern Warfare 3.2 in regards to the open world combat type scenarios, where you will be doing kind of like some strange open world type stuff, and then also some missions where you're essentially basically going in and doing like undercover type missions. It's a bit odd, a bit strange, and it wasn't quite what I was expecting and or hoping for a Call of Duty entry, but some folks are really into that, so yeah, kind of a bit of a big surprise for me there. As per usual, it's a single player campaign with a focus on linear elements. Some of the linear areas have less of a sense of scale like the older Call of Duties used to, but you do get a high fidelity, high quality experience, which is what you do come to expect from Call of Duty. It's just odd because you'll have long segments where there's like 20 minutes of time where you're kind of not shooting anybody and you're just sort of going around chatting and doing weird role-playing type things. So they basically kind of went in an RPG focus with this entry, which I thought was a bit peculiar for Call of Duty. Like literally you have this playhouse that you kind of go to between levels where you get to talk with your squad, get to know them, which is cool, but you have these, not really branching, but you have like Skyrim type conversational points out of like a Bethesda game. When you're talking to various people and you have a safe house that you earn money while playing the levels, like you find money and then you can level up your house, and then they kind of make you really weak at the beginning of the game, and you have to essentially like build yourself up by buying like better health, or you flinch less during combat. And yeah, it was an interesting choice for the style of play. And like it's set during the 90s, so you've got this really, really cool sort of conflict. And those levels I actually thought were the best levels, were the ones where you're actually kind of doing like the Desert Storm type scenarios. And it just kind of feels like they wanted to do more of like a James Bond game. And like I don't know, Treyarch used to work on those, but it did feel a little like off, because I was expecting something, or I was hoping for something a little bit more traditional, and they seemingly have like really just completely moved around and away from that old style of linear high-octane combat and action for something where it's more little bursts of intense combat like this in tight spaces, and then more about a quirky team coming together, similar to like Vanguard, breaking all the rules and then heading out to go and get the job done, Black Ops style, headed by Woods, who's had better days at this point, but he's still tough and powerful. And yeah, then you're like kind of a strange setup for your overall villain, and some weird trippy situations. There's like a whole segment where you do like a zombies mission in the campaign. I guess it's supposed to be more of a psychological type thing, but I still found it to be a little odd and out there. It was very strange and not really what I was kind of expecting for a campaign. Like some of it was a bit bizarre. It is decently lengthy, so if you are into the style of it, you do get a good amount of game time out of the campaign, especially if you like to sit around and take in the backdrop lore of interacting with various missions and stuff. I don't know, I found that kind of silly. So I wasn't loving the campaign in this one. As I said, I know a lot of people do, but whatever is what it is. It is a big increase and improvement over what we had the previous year with Modern Warfare 3.2. At the same time, I do hope that maybe we get some more traditional segments in the future, because I wasn't huge on the open world stuff where you're just like gathering armor plates and fighting people, and I don't know, the Warzone has infected every part of Call of Duty and there's just no running away from it. But the campaign was okay. It wasn't mind-blowing for me, but I know some people like it a lot more. Zombies time. Alright, prior to diving in and really showcasing the zombies, I did want to talk about the technical elements of the game. So what we were seeing for the campaign was the 4K 60 FPS, dynamic 4K 60 FPS mode. There's HDR support. Going forward in the video for zombies and the multiplayer, we're at the 120Hz mode, which is a dynamic 1440p at 120 FPS. So that's kind of your option. I would recommend playing with the higher frame rate mode across the experience whenever you can, because I do feel that it's better. For campaign, you do get a much better resolution quality going for the 120Hz off, and because campaign isn't as competitive as multiplayer, I would say maybe going in that direction would be great. You can adjust things such as the blur, on-demand texture streaming is now baked in, we've got FSR, we've got your FOV options that you can adjust in the settings, and for those that are doing content creation, you can mute the licensed music. Alright, it's zombies time. So zombies in recent years really hasn't been traditional in the sense of what I'm used to. I loved the original zombies going back to World at War, and the last couple of years of zombies for me just hasn't felt like zombies. This is, however, an exciting middle ground, and I know that Warzone is not going away. That style, Warzone, as I had mentioned, has infected every part of Call of Duty. Run from it, hide from it, it's everywhere in this game, so you just gotta kind of deal with it. We're never gonna get a traditional zombies again, but I think this is a nice middle ground that feels fun, engaging, and similar to what we had in the past. Now, I don't know if it's just really easy, but I was surviving up to, like, my first try was 30-something rounds, second try on a different map was 20-something rounds. There's two levels. There's this one, which is Liberty Falls. It's a town. It's really cool. I like it. And then there's Terminus, which is a jail kind of area, similar to Mob of the Dead, but not like Mob of the Dead, which I appreciated actually having a new environment to play in. So 2 isn't a lot of maps for zombies, but it's a decent amount at the launch, and I'm sure they're going to add more over time. And I will say that it was kind of a fine selection. I actually quite like these levels a fair bit, and zombies greatly exceeded my expectations, as I just really didn't have much at all for zombies, and then I was like, oh, okay. Because we got the return of round-based zombies, we've got actual preset maps that you move through, and there's just tons of zombies to blast through and shoot, and yeah, it was kind of cool. And as per usual in zombies, you will be buying guns on the wall, buying items, buying perks, you know, Juggernog, quick revive, stuff like that. There is the mystery box and all of its magic. There are things such as like Pack-a-Punch. You can Pack-a-Punch your guns over and over and over again. It's really just kind of zombies like you know, but with more stuff, more things happening. There is like the Easter egg story of sorts, which is, you know, where you kind of work through a narrative in here if you care about that. But you can also survive, and then there's the exfiltration, which I never got the point of leaving in the middle of a zombies match, but you know, if you're into that kind of thing, that's an option here. There's also various other tools you could make. There's actually like salvage that you collect, and then from that you're able to use the scrap salvage in order to like craft things like self-revive or like a turret, and you know, you can use kill streaks, get like a chopper gunner, which is a bit weird, but it's a good save if you're a little overwhelmed and you have one of those, and you just pop and blast everything around you. So, a great variety of zombies, a great looking environment, and I would say I was actually really happy with the zombies. Oh, don't tease me with that ray gun and then not provide it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's the most fun I've had with zombies in years. I haven't been really too blown away by zombies. I've actually quite hated it in recent years, but this is actually quite solid. A lot of fun. I can see myself playing a fair bit of this, especially since the time just seems to flow by. You can also create a save if you play in single player, but generally the game is meant to be played cooperatively with 4 players as a team, battling, shooting, and grinding through the never-ending hordes of zombies that continue to come your way and continue to be a problem as you survive as long as you physically can. But yeah, I think zombies is actually pretty great. I had a good time with it. It's not the traditional sense or style that I loved, but, you know, it's close enough, and I think it hits the mark, especially in comparison to the zombies quality we've had in recent years. I actually had a bundle of fun playing this, and I was shockingly surprised by it. So, good luck surviving against the undead if the zombies is part of the experience that you love the most, because it's pretty solid here. Let's go to multiplayer. This is the multiplayer portion of the experience, but just a mention before diving into that the controller feels fantastic with the DualSense kind of vibration, everything being used to the max, which is expected for a high-octane title such as Call of Duty. And the big focus here is the omnidirectional movement, which is something that I find to be a natural progression to the Call of Duty franchise that allows you to dip, duck, and dodge in all kinds of different directions. And it's essentially, as I had mentioned, just a natural progression for the series, in my opinion. I'm not necessarily like blown away by it in terms of it completely changing how I play, but I do think it is kind of a, well, just natural progression for how this franchise should feel, and I'm assuming Call of Duty going forward will feature this across the packages, just like we all got the sliding and the jumping on everything now. I'm assuming this is going to be the core movement evolution, and yeah, it feels pretty great. Alright, so with the 120 FPS mode on, let's talk about the multiplayer that is present within this game. So this is something that leans heavily on Modern Warfare 3.2. It is a bit of a change-up with that Treyarch kind of aesthetic to it. Someone mentioned X-Defiant, and hilariously, I can't shake that when I play this in terms of the look. It feels like a little bit more of a polished version of that game, which is sort of funny for the multiplayer. But yeah, I'd say the multiplayer is generally solid. It's okay. I was kind of not hugely impressed by the beta. I also had to turn on the motion smoothing in terms of like motion sickness reduction during the beta, but I haven't had to for the full release. So that's been kind of a nice little, you know, improvement for me that I don't need that setting. So I thought I would mention that too if you watch my beta coverage of this. And going from there, just this element of it improving a lot from what I had played and experienced with the beta. I think the multiplayer has a generally solid selection of maps, a decent amount of content. It does feel a bit traditionally like kind of bare bones compared to what we're used to in terms of the, you know, I guess you would say modes and stuff, but coming from the very matured Modern Warfare, I guess that's kind of expected. You know, that game had a full amount of like a previous year to lean on and also a full year of extra content, whereas this is sort of starting from scratch again, which is a little hard to get used to, you know. You're missing out on your operators that you've bought, or your blueprints, or your guns, and yeah, it's kind of a bit of a change up for me, and I'm still getting used to it gameplay-wise, you know, leveling up the guns again from the scratch, and the scratch, yeah, that's a weird way to phrase that, but you get what I'm saying in that regard. It is a little hard to get used to things again, and it'll be interesting because this is one that returns with the prestiging system, and it sort of goes back to, like, basics in a lot of way, and we don't have, like, large-scale multiplayer setups either. So something like Ground War, that it's more focused on the traditional 6v6 setup of combat that you're probably used to for Call of Duty. But yeah, it feels similar to last year's, but it's got the guns that are focused from the 90s, which again I think is a setting that is not fully utilized, honestly, across this package. But I do like the additional levels that were added from the beta. I think, or, well, after the beta. The levels from the beta, some of them weren't the best, and some of the levels in those aren't the best, but some of the maps, decently solid, get the job done. Overall, the multiplayer is a generally solid time. I think those that play Call of Duty a lot will be fine with it and have fun with it. I myself am like, okay, it's alright. I'm definitely missing Modern Warfare 3.2 quite a bit, just because I guess I'm so used to that. But I'm sure I will adapt over time to this style of play and get used to it and everything like that. And it's, again, it's solid, it's fine. It doesn't really break the mold for the Call of Duty multiplayer experience in the, I guess you would say, the modern era. It kind of plays it safe in a lot of ways, but I know people really love the Black Ops style of combat, so I think this one will hit well and resonate with the core multiplayer audience that really enjoys that style of play and that style of combat that they have been building up over the last few iterations of Call of Duty. Just, yeah, with that Treyarch flair and style that you probably like. There does need to be a bit of work with like spawning and some of the way that objectives in that play, but overall it's not too bad. It's fine, it gets the job done. It's about what you expect from a multiplayer experience within Call of Duty. Alright, let's dive into general thoughts. Overall, I would say this is a solid entry in the Call of Duty franchise. It doesn't necessarily change things too greatly across the experience, but for those that do want a radically changed campaign, I think you've kind of got that. I hate the open world mission designs concept. I'm not into it. That's a terrible spawn. I don't like the setup of it. It's not for me. I did like the heisting mission. I thought that was really cool. The other mission where you're doing politics stuff I thought was really boring and kind of mundane, and some of it felt a little comical. There was a scenario when I was doing the campaign where a guy that was like a Batman villain basically just kept throwing RCXDs at me, and I don't know, some of it felt a little silly where you've got this ragtag team that's coming together to fight all the odds, kind of like Vanguard had. Where was that person shooting me from? Where? Oh, were they just like lying down, or? Oh, okay, didn't even see that. You know, when they're on the ground like that, it's hard to tell, I guess. So, yeah, I guess that's okay. The campaign, not necessarily huge on it, gets the job done. I can see how some people might really like the concept of it. I want something a little bit more traditional and, like, exciting and theatrically, like, pushing in terms of combat and narrative, and it just kind of feels like they did play it a little bit safe in regards to reusing, you know, the same exact concept that every Black Ops seems to do in regards to our pal, the evil gas, and, you know, the same trippy ending sequence, and it just really seems like they kind of go to the same places and do the same thing in every one of the campaigns, and for Black Ops specifically, and it's just, it really feels like they underutilized the 90s setting, in my opinion, because it could have been a lot more of a serious combative thing, and they wanted to make a Bond game, it felt like, more as opposed to an actual Call of Duty campaign experience, which to me was disappointing, and I think that's really fair. From my perspective. Then the zombies is great in this. I actually had a lot of fun. It was probably my favorite part of the entire experience was playing the zombies mode. I really did kind of like it. I understand that we're never going to get like a truly traditional zombies pack unless they give us Chronicles or something, which would be awesome. But for a middle ground between the expectations of zombies being like basically Warzone, it's nice to have round-based zombies. The maps were well set up. I like the style of it. I thought it all kind of played well, and fighting hordes of the undead with buddies was actually a blast. A really, really good time. The multiplayer, I think, is greatly improved from what I had experienced in the beta. It's generally solid, it's decent, it gets the job done, it's pretty back to basics for a lot of it, while still building off of the mechanics prior. I do think the omnidirectional movement is a nice change-up for COD, but I don't find that personally it radically changes how I play. I do find that others are flopping around a lot more, which, you know, is going to be a plus or minus depending on your interest in the Call of Duty franchise. I do find that some of the levels are a tad overly large and some of them are a bit awkward. It feels sort of like Call of Duty Ghosts in that regard, where you've got these maps where there's these long gaps of you just kind of walking around trying to find people, as opposed to action and combat that's faster like it was in Modern Warfare 3 too. So again, a generally solid Call of Duty offering here on the PlayStation 5. It feels good. It looks good. We've got a decently solid resolution quality, depending on if you're doing, like, you know, the full 4K 60, it's going to look, you know, sharper, it's going to look cleaner, but if you go for the 120 Hz, I still think the dynamic 1440p mode looks relatively clean, relatively sharp, maybe a little slightly lower resolution compared to what I was playing on the Series X side of things, but I think visually it looks fine. It delivers something that's smooth, well-performing, and the quality that you would expect out of the Call of Duty franchise. Your mileage is going to vary every year that we play this franchise and things like that, and it's interesting to see evolutions in elements like the campaign that people seem to really like, whereas I seem to not like that sort of style and want something more traditional, and it'll be really interesting to see how this franchise continues to evolve in the years to come, as we are supposed to get another Black Ops-like experience similar to this next year following this one up, and I am curious how that will change things. And of course, I'll probably be back doing reviews of Call of Duty. It was really nice to be able to take a look at this here on the PlayStation 5. I will be following up by taking a look at this on the PlayStation 5 Pro in the near future, so I hope you do come back to check that out if you are interested. And yeah, always fun to dive in and check out Call of Duty, and it was nice to be able to do so on PlayStation for once.